So here I'm taking my Gorilla wood glue and I am using it to secure the trim. The bottom trim of the whole chest is kind of loose, so I'm just taking the wood glue and I'm starting on one corner and I'm squeezing it in the best I can into the crevice, kind of pulling the trim away, letting it loosen, get that hole a little bigger, and I'm just using the wood glue along the whole part of the trim. I'm doing one side at a time, but I'm going to do the entire trim. As you can see here, I even try using a metal pick to kind of just push as much wood glue in the trim as I can. So then I take my clamp. I ended up taking 2 clamps, and these little pieces were where the legs were. I'm using them to secure the clamp, and I am just using my clamp to get the trim as tight as possible to the chest so that wood glue is able to dry and the trim is tight along like it's supposed to be. I do one on each side and I'm going to continue that along the whole trim. Then, as you can see here, I'm using a wipe just to wipe up the excess wood glue because excess wood glue is a no-no. So next I went through and I cleaned the entire piece thoroughly through. I used a scrubby and some degreaser. Once I started cleaning, I noticed that the decals were loose and very dirty underneath, so I ended up taking them off. And as you can see here in this clip, it was very gross underneath with dirt and old glue, hence the looseness because the glue had kind of like just gotten really old and brittle. So I cleaned that all up. And then in the next clip, you see I re-glued it down. So here I'm taking my Gorilla wood glue and I am generously applying it to the decal. There's little nails that are in the decal that I was able to line up in the holes and just kind of hammer it back in, and then I put weight on top of the decals to like help push it down and let it dry. So we also re-glued the legs back on. I forgot to record this part, but just wanted to let you guys know that. Once I was done cleaning the entire piece and putting the decals back on, I scuff sanded it with 120 grit sandpaper. Scuff sanding is really important. It's the step before priming. It really just helps primer to stick to your piece better. After I was done scuff sanding, I went through once again with my degreaser and I just gave it a really good cleaning and wipe down to get all that extra dust off. I then used my bin shellac primer over the entire piece. I prefer bin shellac because it helps stop bleed throughs from tannins and knots in wood. I gave it a really good mix up. This was a new can. I highly recommend mixing. And then I just applied it over the whole piece with a normal brush. I just use cheap brushes because if you don't have denatured alcohol, then it kind of ruins them after. I don't know if it was the heavy stains in the piece or if it was because it was a new can. No matter how much I had mixed it, I ended up having to do like honestly 4 coats of primer on this piece. There was just still bleed through, and I just kept applying, sanding in between until it covered the whole thing. So here you are seeing I am hand sanding the corners of the top. The top I stained. It was really hard to get in, so I used a pick and just a 120. And then I orbital sanded with 120 and then a 220 over the entire top. Next, I just took a damp cloth and I wiped down the top, got all of the dust and the old like sanding stuff off of it. I usually like to use tack cloths, but a damp cloth works just as well. And then I used golden pecan on top. My sister-in-law, who I did the hope chest for, was trying to get it to match her other furniture in her room, so it was a lighter color. Unfortunately, it was a wood veneer. It was a darker wood veneer, so anytime you're working with a darker wood veneer, even if you use a lighter stain, it is going to be darker because of the natural color of the veneer. So I tried my best. As you can see here, it still was a lot darker than what the can showed, which I knew that was going to happen. After that, I used Rust-Oleum's Chalked Ultra Matte Paint in Linen White. My sister-in-law requested a white distressed look, and after I did 3 coats of that, I went through with a 120 sandpaper and just distressed all of the corners and edges. And the decals just to give it that worn, weathered look. Then I used Minwax Poly in matte over the entire piece and waxed the top. But thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe and like.